Good evening, dear listeners. As you settle into your comfortable space, I invite you to take a deep breath, letting the air fill your lungs and then gently release it, allowing the cares of the day to drift away. This is a sacred time for relaxation, a moment carved out just for you, where the soothing cadence of my voice will guide you into a state of calm and serenity. Together, we will embark on a journey through a most intriguing corner of history, one that may seem dull at first glance but holds a tapestry of gentle stories that can lull you into a peaceful slumber. Tonight, we will immerse ourselves in the quiet yet fascinating world of medieval town criers. These individuals, often overlooked in the grand narratives of our past, played a surprisingly crucial role in the fabric of daily life during the Middle Ages. With their distinctive attire and resonant voices, town criers were the bearers of news, announcements, and decrees. The rhythm of their lives revolved around the very protocols that governed their bell ringing, and the timing of their announcements held significance that rippled through the towns they served. As we explore this history, we will delve into the specific timing protocols that dictated when a town crier could announce important news. You will learn how these time frames were carefully orchestrated, ensuring that their messages reached the townsfolk at the most opportune moments. This delicate dance of timing reflects a deep understanding of human nature and the needs of the community, a reminder of the harmony that existed even in a world so different from ours. We will also take a leisurely stroll through the regulations surrounding bell ringing frequency. Picture the air filled with the soft tolling of bells, each chime a signal to the townspeople, each ring a heartbeat of the town. The regulations, though seemingly mundane, reveal a structured society that valued order and clarity. You will discover the reasons behind the frequency of these bell rings, from the joyous announcements of festivals to the solemn proclamations of misfortune. As we journey through these historical protocols and practices, allow the gentle unfolding of each narrative to wash over you, enveloping you in a blanket of tranquility. The rhythm of our exploration will be slow and soothing, much like the ebb and flow of a quiet evening. Each detail, from the time of day that a crier would take to the streets, to the specific sounds of the bells that would announce their presence, will be shared in a way that invites you to relax and unwind. So, dear listeners, find a comfortable position. Close your eyes if you wish, and let the soft sounds of history wrap around you like a warm, cozy blanket. Let your mind drift as we embark on this gentle exploration of medieval town crier announcement timing protocols and bell ringing frequency regulations. Now, as we prepare to delve deeper into this soothing narrative, I invite you to let go of any lingering thoughts or distractions. Allow yourself to be fully present in this moment, ready to drift into the calm embrace of history. With each word, may you feel more relaxed, more at ease, as we begin our journey into the serene and structured world of the medieval town crier. And now, let us turn our attention to the first whispers of this story, exploring the fascinating protocols that shaped the lives of these heralds of the past. The historical development of town crier announcement timing protocols and bell ringing frequency regulations is a subject that, while seemingly mundane, reveals much about the administrative and social structures of medieval towns. The earliest documented instances of town criers can be traced back to the Roman Empire, although the formalization of their role emerged more distinctly in the late 12th century, specifically within the context of English towns. The earliest notable reference occurs in the year 1214 in London, where the position of the town crier began to be recognized as an official role. At this time, the crier was responsible for announcing royal decrees, local news, and public notices. Historical records indicate that these announcements were typically made in town squares, often in proximity to significant architectural features such as the town hall or marketplace, where the population could gather. The announcement processes were largely dictated by local customs and the physical layout of the town. One of the earliest recorded town criers was a man named William of Westminster, who served in London during the reign of King John. His duties included the ringing of a handbell, which signaled the beginning of his announcements. The bell, often made of brass or iron, was approximately 15 centimeters in diameter and produced a sound that could carry through the crowded streets. This bell became a crucial tool in the crier's repertoire, allowing him to draw attention before delivering important messages. By the year 1250, records indicate that various towns had begun to adopt standardized protocols concerning the timing of announcements. The town of York, for example, established a set of guidelines that dictated announcements should occur at the top of each hour, with exceptions made for urgent news. This regulation was critical, as it ensured that citizens could anticipate when announcements would be made, thereby enhancing the efficiency of information dissemination. The architectural context of towns during this period also played a significant role in the effectiveness of town criers. Many medieval towns featured a bell tower, often adjacent to the town hall, which served not only as a clock but also as a site from which criers could project their voices. The towers were typically constructed from local stone and featured a distinctive spire, which served as a visual cue for residents to gather. For instance, the bell tower in the town of Chester, built in 1300, became a focal point for announcements, and its elevated position allowed the crier to be heard from a considerable distance. In the late 14th century, the role of the town crier began to formalize further. By 1385, the city of Winchester had instituted regulations that required all criers to obtain a license from the town council. This licensing process not only validated the crier's position but also mandated adherence to specific protocols concerning announcement timing. Criers were instructed to begin their daily routines at dawn, ringing their bells every hour until sunset. This practice was codified in the Winchester Town Records, which noted the necessity of maintaining a consistent schedule to foster civic order. The administrative procedures surrounding the town crier's announcements were also quite structured. In many towns, a schedule was established that dictated when various types of announcements should be made. For instance, routine announcements such as market days or public meetings were typically reserved for the morning hours, while more urgent notifications, such as warnings of fires or criminal activity, could be made at any hour as needed. Daily routines of town criers were both rigorous and repetitive. Criers often began their day shortly after dawn, preparing their bells and rehearsing their announcements. The town crier of Lichfield, for example, was noted for his punctuality, maintaining a strict schedule that involved ringing his bell precisely at 5 a.m. to announce the commencement of the market. This routine, which was meticulously followed, ensured that the townsfolk were informed and prepared. In contrast, smaller towns might have used more readily available materials. For example, in the late 15th century, the town of Faversham in Kent opted for a bell cast from iron for their town crier's bell. The decision was influenced by economic factors. While bronze bells were more durable and had superior sound quality, they were also significantly more expensive. The iron bell, though less sonorous and more prone to rust, served the immediate needs of the town without draining its coffers. This decision illustrates how economic realities often dictated the choices of materials and methods in bell construction. Another important aspect of bell construction was the design of the accompanying structures, such as bell towers and stands. These structures were not only functional but also served as landmarks within their communities. The design varied greatly based on local architectural styles, available resources, and the specific needs of the community. In towns like Bruges, Belgium, which thrived during the medieval period, bell towers were often built in a Gothic style, featuring tall spires and intricate stonework. The Belfry of Bruges, constructed between 1240 and 1300, stands as a prime example of this architectural style, with its iconic octagonal tower that housed a series of bells, including those used for public announcements. The process of erecting these bell towers involved considerable planning and labor. Local craftsmen, including stonemasons, carpenters, and blacksmiths, collaborated to create a structure that could withstand the elements while also providing an aesthetically pleasing addition to the town. The construction often began with a sturdy foundation, typically made from local stone or timber, depending on the geography of the area. For instance, in the marshy regions of northern Europe, builders might use wooden piles to raise the structure above the water level, while in more stable areas, a solid stone base would suffice. Historically, the need for town criers and their bells can be traced back to the Roman Empire, where public announcements were often made by heralds and officials. The use of bells for communication purposes became more widespread in medieval Europe, particularly during the 12th and 13th centuries, as towns began to grow and governance became more organized. Town criers played a vital role in disseminating news, announcing events, and relaying official proclamations. The sound of the bell would draw the attention of townsfolk, signaling that important information was about to be shared. In England, the role of the town crier became particularly formalized by the late 15th century. The office of the town crier was established, and official crier costumes, which often included a distinctive coat and a cocked hat, became commonplace. The crier would often stand at a designated location, such as the marketplace or the town square, and ring their bell to gather an audience before delivering the news. The bell itself became a symbol of authority and community. Case studies from various towns illustrate the diversity in bell construction and usage. In York, England, the famous St. Mary's Abbey bell tower housed several bells, each with its own unique history and sound. The largest bell, known as the Great Bell of York, was cast in 1350 and is renowned for its clarity and volume. It has been used for centuries not only for religious services but also for public announcements, marking significant events such as royal proclamations and local festivals. In contrast, the smaller town of Glastonbury faced different circumstances. The town's bell, known as the Glastonbury Bell, was cast in 1430 and served multiple functions, including signaling the start of market days and calling townsfolk to church. Interestingly, the bell was recast in 1648 due to its deterioration, highlighting the ongoing need for maintenance and care of these vital community instruments. In conclusion, the construction of town criers' bells and their accompanying structures was a complex process influenced by a multitude of factors, including local resources, economic conditions, and historical context. From the intricate bronze bells of major cities to the more humble iron bells of smaller towns, each bell tells a unique story of the community it served. The craftsmanship and dedication involved in their creation speak to the importance of communication and public life in medieval society, making these bells more than mere instruments. They are enduring symbols of local heritage and history. The construction methods and materials employed in the crafting of town crier bells during the medieval period constitute a critical aspect of their historical significance. The primary material used for bell casting was bronze, an alloy predominantly composed of copper and tin. The ideal ratio for achieving optimal acoustic properties was approximately 78% copper to 22% tin, a combination that not only ensured durability but also produced a clear, resonant tone. The casting process typically involved the creation of a wax model, which was then enveloped in clay to form a mold. This method, known as the lost wax technique, was prevalent as early as the 12th century. The dimensions of these bells varied widely, with many ranging from 24 inches to 48 inches in diameter. The weight of a standard town crier bell could reach upwards of 300 pounds, necessitating a sturdy support structure. The bell was often mounted on a wooden frame, constructed from oak or other hardwoods, which provided both stability and ease of access for the crier. The bell's clapper, usually made of a similar bronze alloy, was meticulously designed to ensure optimal sound production. The length of the clapper was typically 1/3 the diameter of the bell, a ratio derived from empirical observations of sound wave propagation. Maintenance procedures for town crier bells were essential for preserving their functionality and acoustic quality. Regular inspections were mandated, typically occurring biannually, to assess the structural integrity of both the bell and its supporting frame. Common issues included rust on the clapper and deterioration of the wooden frame, which were addressed through various means. The clapper was often polished using a mixture of vinegar and salt to remove tarnish, while the wooden frame was treated with linseed oil to prevent rotting. Furthermore, bells were periodically retuned, a process requiring the careful removal of material from the bell's lip to adjust its pitch. This procedure was usually performed by a skilled bell founder, who would charge a fee that varied based on the extent of the work required. Financial records pertaining to the construction and maintenance of town crier bells reveal a significant investment by local municipalities. In the year 1350, the cost of a new bell was documented at approximately £5, a substantial sum at the time. This figure included the expenses related to materials, labor, and transportation for the bell from the foundry to the town square. Maintenance costs, on the other hand, averaged about £1 annually, factoring in repairs, retuning, and upkeep of the supporting structure. The financial records also indicate that towns often pooled resources for shared bells, leading to the construction methods and materials utilized for the town crier's announcement stations during the medieval period were dictated largely by the resources available in the local vicinity and the architectural traditions of the region. Most announcement platforms were constructed from timber, as it was the most readily available material. The use of oak was particularly prevalent, given its durability and resistance to rot. The average height of these structures ranged from 10 to 15 feet, with a square base measuring approximately 3 feet by 3 feet to provide stability. Construction typically began with the selection of a suitable site, which was often a central location within the town, such as the market square or near the town hall. Once the site was determined, workers would dig a foundation approximately 2 feet deep to provide a solid base. The timber posts were then erected, often using a technique known as saddle notching, which involved cutting the ends of the logs to fit together securely. The roof of the platform was thatched, composed of straw or reeds, and sloped to allow for rain runoff, with an average pitch of 30 degrees to ensure effective drainage. Maintenance of these structures was a critical aspect of ensuring the functionality of the town crier's platform. Regular inspections were mandated, typically conducted biannually, to assess the integrity of the wood and the thatching. Maintenance procedures included the replacement of any rotting wood, which would generally occur every 5 years, depending on the exposure to the elements. The thatched roofs required more frequent attention, as they would need to be replaced approximately every 2 to 3 years to prevent leaks. A small team of laborers, often consisting of 2 to 3 individuals, was typically assigned to maintenance duties, reflecting the communal responsibility for public structures. Financial records pertaining to the establishment and upkeep of these platforms were meticulously maintained by the town treasurer. For instance, a detailed account from the year 1347 reveals that the initial construction of a platform in the town of Wellingborough cost approximately 12 shillings and 4 pence. The breakdown of these costs included 7 shillings for timber, 3 shillings for labor, and 2 shillings and 4 pence for thatching materials. Subsequent maintenance expenses were documented in a ledger, showing annual costs that fluctuated between 1 shilling and 5 pence to 2 shillings, with the higher costs typically associated with the replacement of thatch. The personnel involved in the operation of the town crier's announcement system consisted primarily of the town crier himself, whose job description was both simple and complex. The town crier was officially appointed by the local magistrate, and his duties included the dissemination of information to the public, which extended to announcements of local events, proclamations from the crown, and various public notices. The crier was often required to be literate, as he sometimes had to read proclamations verbatim, particularly those issued by the monarch. In addition to the primary role of the town crier, there were also assistants, who were responsible for preparing the announcements and ensuring that the crier had the necessary materials. These assistants, often referred to as heralds, played a vital role in the accuracy and clarity of information delivered to the public. A typical herald might receive a stipend of 6 pence per week, reflecting the modest remuneration afforded to those engaged in public service. The technical specifications of the bells used during crier announcements were also subject to specific regulations. The bells, typically forged from bronze, were cast using traditional methods that involved melting the metal and pouring it into a mold. The average bell weighed between 20 and 30 pounds and was approximately 12 inches in diameter. The frequency of ringing was regulated by local ordinances, typically dictating that the bell should be rung clearly at intervals of no less than 5 minutes during announcements. For instance, in the year 1391, the Town Council of York established a formal protocol that mandated the ringing of the crier's bell before and after each announcement. This protocol aimed to ensure that the public was adequately alerted to the impending information. The ringing frequency was further delineated, requiring a minimum of 3 distinct strikes to indicate the start of an announcement, followed by a pause of 30 seconds before the subsequent ringing, which signified the end of the announcement. It is noteworthy that variations existed in the specifications of the bells across different regions. In some towns, a larger bell was used during significant proclamations, such as the accession of a new monarch or the declaration of a local holiday. These larger bells could weigh upwards of 50 pounds and would require a dedicated mechanism for ringing, often involving a pulley system that allowed the crier to strike the bell with greater force and resonance. The overall organization of the town crier's duties, including the timing of announcements and bell ringing, was reflective of the medieval societal structure, which valued order and predictability. Timelines were established, with specific hours of the day designated for announcements. For instance, in London, it was common for criers to make their rounds at dawn, noon, and dusk, thus aligning their activities with the daily rhythms of the townspeople. In summary, the protocols surrounding the timing of announcements and the regulations governing bell ringing in medieval towns were deeply interwoven with the construction methods, maintenance procedures, financial records, personnel responsibilities, and technical specifications of the announcement systems. These elements collectively contributed to the efficiency and effectiveness of public communication, encapsulating the values and practices of the society of the time. Such detailed considerations of the town crier's operations not only reflect the importance of this role in medieval society but also serve as a testament to the lengths to which communities would go to ensure that information was conveyed accurately and timely. The meticulous nature of the construction, maintenance, and operational protocols underscores a broader commitment to civic engagement and the dissemination of knowledge, illustrating the significance of the town crier in the fabric of medieval life. The structures typically featuring a square or rectangular base. Some were elaborately designed, adorned with carvings that reflected local artistry and culture. For instance, in England during the late 12th century, many towns embraced the Gothic architectural style, which influenced the design of these announcement stations. In places like York and Canterbury, town criers' platforms often included pointed arches and intricate stonework, showcasing the local craftsmanship and artistic trends of the time. The construction of these announcement platforms often began with the selection of a suitable site. Town planners, working in conjunction with local guilds, would choose locations that were easily accessible to the public, such as marketplaces or town squares. The construction of a typical platform took several weeks, depending on the complexity of the design and the availability of skilled labor. For example, a notable case is the platform built in the town of Stratford-upon-Avon in 1570, which took approximately 6 weeks to complete, utilizing a local oak forest for its timber supply. In some towns, local clerks or notaries were appointed to maintain records of significant announcements made by town criers. This practice, although not universally adopted, allowed for a degree of accountability and traceability in civic communications. The records typically included the date and time of announcements, the content of the proclamations, and any relevant details regarding the associated bell ringing. Such records were often stored in town archives and were referenced during civic meetings or disputes, thereby illustrating the importance of documentation in the governance of medieval towns. Furthermore, the introduction of ledger systems in the late medieval period marked a significant development in record-keeping practices. Towns began to employ ledgers to document not only announcements but also the attendance of criers, the frequency of bell ringing, and any penalties imposed for non-compliance with regulations. The meticulous nature of these records reflected a growing bureaucratic ethos that sought to enhance transparency and accountability within local governance. In conclusion, the evolution of town crier announcement timing protocols and bell ringing frequency regulations is a multifaceted narrative intertwined with regional variations, bureaucratic developments, logistical challenges, and record-keeping practices. While seemingly mundane, these elements collectively underscore the significance of communication in medieval urban life, illustrating how the mechanisms of civic information dissemination evolved in response to the changing needs of society. The sleepy yet intricate history of these protocols serves as a testament to the underlying complexities of medieval governance and community life. The dull history of medieval town crier announcement timing protocols and bell ringing frequency regulations, Part 7. In the annals of history, the role of the town crier has often been overshadowed by more flamboyant figures of the medieval era. However, a meticulous examination reveals the intricate web of regional variations and comparisons that characterize the town crier's duties across various territories. Such variations were not merely trivial differences. They encapsulated the broader cultural, social, and political climates of the regions in which these public announcers operated. Regional variations and comparisons. Across the medley of medieval Europe, town criers adhered to a multitude of enunciate conventions, which were often dictated by local customs and the socio-political landscape. For instance, in the bustling market towns of England, the crier would typically announce the time of day alongside market news and royal decrees, employing a bell to punctuate his proclamations. The frequency of bell ringing was standardized at intervals that varied by region, reflecting local traditions and the populace's appetite for news. In contrast, the criers in the rural landscapes of France tended to limit their announcements primarily to matters of local concern, such as agricultural harvests and communal events, ringing their bells at a less frenetic pace. In Italy, the role of the town crier evolved further, with some towns adopting a practice of multilingual announcements to cater to the diverse populations that resided within their borders. This was particularly true in port towns like Venice, where the influx of traders necessitated announcements in languages such as Greek, Arabic, and various dialects of the Slavic languages. The bell ringing in these regions took on a ceremonial quality, often accompanied by a flourish of gestures, reflecting the artistic culture of the Italian Renaissance. As one delves deeper into the town crier practices across Europe, it becomes evident that the distinction between urban and rural criers was profound. Urban criers, situated in bustling marketplaces, often had to compete with the cacophony of commerce, leading to the development of unique calling techniques. For instance, criers in populous cities like London frequently employed the use of a raised voice coupled with a series of loud bell rings, while their rural counterparts relied on a softer tone and less frequent ringing, in deference to the pastoral tranquility of the countryside. Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of town crier protocols did not remain static, rather, it underwent a gradual transformation influenced by the changing tides of societal norms, technological advancements, and shifts in governance. During the early Middle Ages, town criers were primarily tasked with the dissemination of news pertaining to the local lords' decrees and ecclesiastical announcements. However, as the feudal system began to wane and towns grew more autonomous, the role of the crier expanded to include more secular matters. By the late medieval period, the advent of the printing press heralded a new era in the dissemination of information. Although the town crier remained a vital source of news, the proliferation of printed pamphlets and broadsheets began to encroach upon his territory. This necessitated a shift in the crier's role. Rather than solely announcing news, he increasingly found himself responsible for directing townsfolk to the locations where printed materials could be obtained, often ringing his bell vigorously to draw attention to the latest publications. The Renaissance brought about an additional layer of complexity to the crier's responsibilities. With the rise of humanism and the emphasis on public discourse, the town crier became a conduit for civic engagement, announcing not only news but also civic duties, public debates, and community gatherings. This transformation was often accompanied by an increase in the frequency of bell ringing, as the crier sought to capture the attention of a populace that was becoming more politically and socially aware. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. As towns grew in size and complexity, so too did the bureaucratic frameworks governing the activities of town criers. By the 15th century, many towns had established formal regulations that outlined the specific duties and responsibilities of their criers. These laws often stipulated the frequency of announcements, the timing of bell ringing, and the types of messages that could be communicated. In some cases, a town council would convene to discuss the efficacy of the crier's announcements, leading to amendments in the regulations as deemed necessary. In England, the Statute of Proclamations of 1539 exemplifies the increasing formalization of announcement protocols. This law mandated that certain royal proclamations be announced by the town crier, specifically at designated times. The regulation of timing ensured that the crier would not only disseminate news efficiently but also maintain a sense of order within the community. Failure to comply with these regulations could result in penalties, ranging from fines to removal from office. In addition to announcements of royal decrees, local laws often dictated that criers announce matters of public health or safety, including pestilence outbreaks or other emergencies. These regulations were crucial in ensuring that the populace remained informed of pressing issues, reinforcing the crier's role as a critical node in the network of public communication. Supply chain and logistics. The logistics of bell ringing and announcement timing were not solely dependent on the crier's individual capabilities but also involved a broader supply chain that ensured the availability of equipment. In conclusion, the history of medieval town crier announcement timing protocols and bell ringing frequency regulations is a multifaceted narrative, characterized by regional variations, bureaucratic complexities, logistical challenges, and evolving record-keeping practices. Though seemingly mundane, these practices reflect the intricate tapestry of medieval life and governance, revealing how communication shaped social structures and community engagement during this pivotal era. The dull history of medieval town crier announcement timing protocols and bell ringing frequency regulations. Part 9: Regional Variations and Comparisons. The role of the town crier varied significantly from one region to another during the medieval period. In England, for example, town criers were often seen as the official voice of the local government, whereas in France, the role was sometimes filled by a designated public servant known as the herald, who had additional ceremonial duties to perform. In Italy, the local banditore often doubled as a town crier and a public auctioneer, thus blending two distinct functions into one individual. The distinction in roles was not merely ceremonial, it reflected the broader cultural and political aims of the communities they served. For instance, in heavily fortified cities such as Carcassonne or Avignon, the town crier's announcements were often laced with a sense of urgency, reflecting the fortified nature of these locations and their susceptibility to conflict. By contrast, rural towns such as those in the English countryside had a more relaxed approach to the role, where the crier might be seen as an entertaining figure rather than a serious communicator of urgent information. Moreover, comparisons can be drawn between the frequency of announcements. In bustling hubs like London, town criers might make several announcements a day, while in less populated areas, daily announcements might occur only once or twice. This disparity in frequency underscored the varying needs for information dissemination based on the size and activity level of the towns. Part 10: Evolution over different time periods. Tracing the evolution of town crier protocols reveals a gradual shift from a purely oral tradition to a more structured and regulated practice. In the earliest medieval period, announcements were often made sporadically, relying on the town crier's discretion. As towns grew and became more complex, the need for timely and reliable communication became paramount. This led to the establishment of standardized timings for announcements, which began to be documented in the late 12th century. By the 13th century, the introduction of the Magna Carta and subsequent legal frameworks necessitated more formalized communication methods within towns. Town criers became pivotal in disseminating legal notices and public decrees, and the timing of these announcements often adhered to a strict schedule, reflecting the growing bureaucratic nature of governance. The introduction of the printing press in the late 15th century marked a significant turning point. While the advent of printed pamphlets began to overshadow the role of the town crier, many communities still relied on criers to announce new publications and engage those who were unable to read. This duality of communication persisted for centuries, with town criers announcing printed news until the rise of mass media in the 19th century. Part 11: Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. As the role of the town crier became more integral to civic life, various bureaucratic regulations began to emerge. These regulations were often codified in local town charters or statutes, specifying not only the duties and responsibilities of the criers but also the manner in which they were to conduct their announcements. For instance, in 1363, King Edward III issued a decree mandating that criers in London announce royal proclamations at specific times of day, ensuring that the populace was uniformly informed. Failure to adhere to these regulations could result in penalties, including fines or even imprisonment, illustrating the serious nature of their role within the fabric of medieval society. In addition to time-specific regulations, there were also guidelines regarding the type of announcements that could be made. Town criers were often restricted to governmental or civic matters, with personal or commercial announcements reserved for other channels. This delineation was meant to maintain order and prevent the dissemination of false information, which could lead to civil unrest. Part 12: Supply Chain and Logistics. The logistics surrounding the operation of town criers were surprisingly intricate, particularly when considering the relatively low level of technology available at the time. Town criers often needed to coordinate with local authorities to ensure they had the correct announcements, which required a well-organized supply chain of information. In larger cities, this could mean liaising with various departments, such as the local guilds or the mayor's office. Often, criers were required to attend meetings where they would receive updates and announcements, sometimes even needing to take detailed notes to ensure accuracy. The physical logistics of moving from one location to another to make these announcements were also considerable. Many criers employed a standard route that allowed them to maximize their coverage while minimizing the time taken between stops. This logistical framework also extended to the bells that were frequently used to accompany announcements. The bells themselves were often operated by a distinct guild, who had strict regulations regarding bell ringing frequency and maintenance. Coordination between the town crier and bell operators was essential, as the timing of the bell rings would often indicate when an announcement was to be made. Part 13: Record-Keeping Methods. Record-keeping practices surrounding town crier announcements were largely rudimentary, yet they played a crucial role in maintaining civic order and transparency. Most towns maintained a ledger in which criers recorded the nature of their announcements, the date and time of each proclamation, and any relevant legal documents that accompanied their announcements. In larger cities, dedicated clerks were often employed to assist town criers in this process, ensuring that records were kept neatly and accurately. These records served multiple purposes. They allowed for accountability in the delivery of public information, provided a historical record for future reference, and could serve as evidence in disputes regarding the content or timing of announcements. In some instances, these records were made publicly available, allowing citizens to peruse them and verify the announcements made. This transparency was crucial in building trust between the populace and their local government, fostering a sense of community and shared responsibility. Moreover, the introduction of parchment and later paper around the 12th century allowed for more durable records. However, the reliance on oral traditions meant that many announcements were never formally recorded, leading to a significant gap in the historical record of town crier activities. Conclusion. In summary, the intricate history of town crier announcement timing protocols and bell ringing frequency regulations is a testament to the complexities of medieval civic life. Regional variations, evolving practice. For instance, in the town of Kingston upon Thames, the constable in 1324, John de Merley, was noted to have worked closely with the town crier, Thomas of Canterbury, to develop a series of guidelines for when and how announcements could be made. Documentation shows that de Merley and Thomas would meet weekly to discuss upcoming events, such as market days or public trials, and decide on the optimal timing for announcements. The preference was to announce just after the hour bell tolled, following the local church's schedule, which was deemed to provide the best chance for maximum visibility and audibility. Another minor yet pivotal figure was the town clerk, responsible for documenting all announced proclamations. In the year 1387, a clerk named Robert of Harrow was documented in the town records of Winchester to have created a meticulous log of announcements made by the town crier. His notes included details such as the time of day, the specific content of each announcement, and the accompanying bell ringing frequency. In fact, his records indicate that announcements related to public safety, such as warnings about bandits in the area, would often be accompanied by a specific ringing pattern of 3 short peals followed by a long toll, a practice that was later adopted by other towns. 2. Specific case studies with dates ***. The regulations surrounding the timing of announcements and bell ringing can be illuminated through several specific case studies from various towns. Case Study 1, London, 1345. In 1345, the City of London instituted a formal protocol for town criers, which was documented in the London Statutes. This document specified that criers were to make their announcements at the hour and half-hour marks, following the ringing of the great bell of St. Paul's Cathedral. The protocol required that criers announce the time before proceeding with further proclamations, ensuring that citizens were fully aware of the time before receiving any critical information. Furthermore, the bell ringing frequency was regulated to include 1 toll for every full hour and 2 for every half hour. This structure aimed to standardize the auditory landscape of the city, allowing citizens to differentiate between the various town criers based on the distinct patterns of bells. Case Study 2, York, 1381. In the year 1381, the town of York experienced a significant event involving the town crier during the Peasants' Revolt. The crier, a man named Geoffrey of York, was tasked with announcing the arrival of rebellious forces at the city gates. Local regulations dictated that any announcement regarding potential violence must be prefaced by a series of urgent bell rings. Geoffrey, adhering to the regulations, rang the bell in a frantic pattern, 5 rapid rings followed by a long pause, before announcing, "Hear ye! Hear ye! The rebels approach! Take heed and prepare!" This event not only showcased the urgency of the message but also highlighted the strict adherence to the timing protocols established by the city council, which had been in place since the late 13th century. 3. Comparative analysis with other regions ***. The protocols governing town criers in England during the medieval period can be contrasted with similar practices in other regions of Europe. For instance, in France, The role of the town crier was often filled by the Crier public, who had different regulations regarding announcement timing and bell ringing frequency. In Paris, criers were mandated to announce significant events 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening, distinct from the English practice of hourly announcements. The Parisian crier would announce the time before delivering any community news, but unlike their English counterparts, they were not required to follow a specific bell ringing frequency. Instead, the crier would carry a handbell and ring it at will, often leading to a cacophony of sounds in the streets, as various criers would attempt to outdo each other. Such differences can be attributed to the varying social structures and communication needs of the towns. For example, the more populous and bustling nature of Paris required a different approach to public announcements than the relatively quieter towns in England. 4. Archaeological findings and interpretations ****. Archaeological findings from medieval sites have provided additional insight into the practices surrounding town criers. Excavations in London's East End have uncovered remnants of a bell tower from the 14th century, believed to be used specifically for town announcements. The structure's foundations suggest a design aimed at optimizing sound projection, indicating an awareness of the importance of auditory communication in public life. Moreover, in York, a recent excavation revealed an ancient stone tablet inscribed with regulations regarding announcement practices. This tablet, dated to 1390, specifies not only the required timing for announcements but also the specific phrases that criers were mandated to use. The inscription reads, "Let it be known that all matters of great import shall be proclaimed with solemnity and clarity, and the bells shall toll as dictated by the hour." These archaeological interpretations provide further evidence of the meticulous nature of medieval communication protocols and the community's dependence on the town crier for timely information. V. Primary source quotations, invented but plausible. To illustrate the social significance and procedural nature of town crier announcements, hypothetical primary source quotations from various historical figures can be constructed. 1. Geoffrey of York, Crier, 1381, "As the bell tolls 5 times, I shall announce the encroaching peril of the rebels, for it is my duty to awaken the spirit of vigilance amongst the good citizens of York." 2. John de Merley, Constable, 1324, "The timing of our announcements must align with the sacred tolling of the hour. It is the rhythm of our community's pulse, marking moments of news and order." 3. Robert of Harrow, Town Clerk, 1387, "In the annals of our town's history, let it be recorded that the crier's voice, coupled with the ringing of bells, serves as the lifeblood of communication, binding us to the fabric of our society." 4. Thomas of Canterbury, Crier, 1345, "By the grace of the bells, let the townsfolk gather, for the hour has struck, and with it, the proclamations of the day shall be made known." 6. Conclusion, the tedium of regulation ****. In conclusion, the history of medieval town crier announcement timing protocols and bell ringing frequency regulations is a complex tapestry woven with the contributions of minor historical figures, specific case studies, comparative analyses, archaeological findings, and plausible primary source quotations. While the subject matter may seem tedious and monotonous, it encapsulates the intricate societal structures of medieval life. The town crier, far from being a mere entertainer, was the embodiment of communication within the community, adhering to protocols designed to optimize the flow of information in a time when written